All right, so today we've got Joe Baumann on our show from Kraus Anderson. Joe, I'd like to welcome you to the Contractors Bible. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Joe has an incredible story that I'm really excited to dig into. I've known Joe for a couple of years now through another organization that I started and ran. But I didn't know much of his backstory until we started talking about this, which is really interesting. Joe's an industry veteran who started his career working as a carpenter, working outside in the Minnesota winters. After working for a couple of general contractors, he decided that he was going to start his own business, and after 24 years had a successful exit. He's currently the director of self-performance for Kraus Anderson, who is the number 128 on the ENR's 2019 list of top contractors in the U.S. So very reputable organization that Joe is working for now, and he's had a long, successful career. So, Joe, thank you for being with us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So tell me, how did you get into carpentry? 26 years old or young kid. How did you get into that?
It's easier to kind of see in retrospect. So when I was young, my dad was a sheet metal worker, and he always told me, don't go into the trades, go to college, right? So that was always my plan. We went to a private college prep high school, the whole deal. But I got into college and I just couldn't stay focused on anything. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay focused at all. And so I quit college and I just went and got a job. And while I was working at a gas station, this guy came in and we were just started talking, and he said he owned a construction company. And I said, "Oh, really? What do you do?" He says, "Well, we have doing this carpentry job. We're building a Menards store." And I said, "Oh, I might be kind of interested in that. You got any openings?" And he said, "Are you afraid of height?" And I said, "No." And he said, "All right, you can start next week." So that's how I got into carpentry work. My
perfect.
Was walking on the 4-inch wide wood trusses that are 10 feet apart. And I was on one and another guy was on the other one 10 feet away from me. And we were carrying a 10-foot long 4x4 that stretched from one to the next one. And we walked back and forth, putting those every 4 feet and put the metal roof on it. So that's basically how I got into the business.
It's funny. I had a similar experience. I grew up in the demolition business. My father owned a demo company. And always growing up, I was inside of a skid steer. And I always wanted to be in the business. And he kept saying, "No, you don't want to be in this business. You're going to go to school." And I went to college for engineering, got an engineering degree, and sat there and was like, I don't want to be an engineer. I want to tear down a building. And there I was after college, back working with him and doing my thing.
It's funny because I got a 22-year-old son. He's a senior in college, and he worked for me doing demolition during the summers. And that made him want to stay as far away from it as he possibly could. A marketing degree here in a couple of weeks. So
that's awesome. So what made you want to start your own business after the carpentry? You went back to school, went in for estimating, worked for some GCs, ended up with Kraus Anderson. And then what made you decide to go off on your own?
Even when I was a carpenter, I did, built decks and garages and kind of did things. And if you knew me when I was a young, even teenager, I always had a pretty good work ethic from my dad. We started caddying at golf courses at, 12 years old. And I got my first real job at a restaurant when I was 15. I lied and told them I was 16. Then rode my bike to all these several miles away when I was just a little kid, I don't know. I just, it's hard to even explain how you get into it to start with, but
you kind of just have this itch to make it a go yourself. If you've got a great work ethic and you've got the knowledge and you kind of want to prove it to yourself.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of it was, I used to tell people that, I think I'd make a better boss than an employee, even from that young age. So I think it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then I kind of tried it a little bit early on before I even went to school, like I say, building the garages and the decks. And I actually realized then that, I could be the best carpenter in the world, and there's a lot of carpenters that start their own businesses, but I don't know the business side of construction. So
Sure.
that prompted me really to go back to school then. And then when I worked for Contractors for several years, at the last employment with Kraus Anderson, it was really busy. It was the early 90s. We had just come through that recession in the 80s. And it just was starting to get so busy that I would call contractors to bid on the jobs that I was putting together. And we just struggled to get demolition contractors. There was only a couple in the Twin Cities. They were always busy. They'd always say they'd get you a bid, and then you never got it on bid day, So that's what prompted me really to jump in at that time, was just that, maybe this is an opportunity for me to do this. So it took several months to convince my wife, till one day she finally said, all right, go ahead, give it a shot. So we looked at our finances and said, with the money we have and the bills we have, my wife didn't work at the time. She was a stay-at-home mom with 2 little kids.
Wow.
Quit my job. We said, all right, we have enough money that we can survive 10 months. So I had 10 months to start making money. And that's how I jumped in. And again, for her to do that with 2 little kids at home and allow me to do that is an unbelievable amount of support that you also need to have, because you can't do it without that. And probably for the first 4 months, so again, I quit my job. I lost my company car, my insurance, everything. And she used to ride a bicycle with 2 kids in a little cart behind it, go to the grocery store, because we only had 1 car for that first few months.
Wow.
Yep. Then the fall of that year, I got a decent sized job and felt comfortable. I bought a used pickup truck for 10 grand. That was my first thing. And then we got another job where we needed a Bobcat, and my dad loaned me $11,000 to buy my first used Bobcat. And from then it was all really took off. So
it's amazing. There's so many stories of people that start like that, where it's you've got to make it or nothing else. You throw all your chips in, and it's cool being able to hear people's stories about success when that's what's on the line. So,
well, you're confident you're going to make it. I knew I was going to make it. If you go into it thinking that, oh man, I might fail. I mean, certainly that's ability, but it's not an option. If it happens, it's not because I didn't do everything I possibly could. But you know what? I'm not going to let it happen.
Absolutely, 100%. So you said after you got a big job, you bought a used pickup truck, and then your dad loaned you 11 grand for your first skid steer.
Yep.
What was, 24 years is a long time to have a business, but
yep.
What was that skid steer the best investment you made throughout your 24 years, or was it?
No. That's just a necessity in the demo business. We did interior demo. We never knocked buildings down. It was always gutting buildings out.
Okay.
A lot of warehouses and things like that where you could drive this Bobcat in the building. It wasn't a dirt machine. It was an interior demo machine.
Sure.
Learned really quickly. Again, like you say, a lot of entrepreneurs learn as they go. I learned really fast that you got to have solid tires on a demo Bobcat. So just things like that. But over the years, there's a lot of different equipment. And I think the key is not that one piece of equipment is the best ever. It's that the latest technology is the best piece of equipment. That's what I always did, which is why I bought even the mini skid steers from Kratos.
Yep. Yeah. It's always interesting, for me growing up in the demo business, I know a lot of people and have been on demo jobs for a long time, and you see all types of contractors. You see the guys that have all used equipment. You see the guys that have all new equipment. Definitely from my experience, having newer technologies definitely gives you a leg up. Not only in your efficiency on the job, but a lot of times it makes you look a lot better to the building owners, and they end up giving you more jobs just because you have the right equipment. Doesn't mean that you can't get the job done without the right equipment. Just if you have the ability to have the best equipment available, it looks more professional.
So here's an interesting thing that I still remember to this day. One of my very first jobs as a project manager right out of school, back in the day, project managers always wore suits, right? That was just the attire of the business at the time. Now we're kind of business casual almost every day, but so we wore suits to work. And he used to tell us that, he goes, remember, you are businessmen in construction, not construction men in business. So that, in other words, be professional. You're a professional businessman. You're not a construction guy. So if you think about it that way, that was the approach I always took in terms of the office side of my business and making it professional and having technology and those kinds of things. So,
no, it really is fantastic advice. Cause you said, right when we started, it was, you didn't know if you could be that business person in construction. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that are out there that they know the trade so well, but learning the business side of it, learning how to estimate a job properly with your true labor burden and your true mm-hmm. overhead and all of these other things, it's really easy to go out to a job site and say, okay, it's going to cost me $100 for this wood, and it's going to take me 8 hours to do it, and I want to make $25 an hour, so I need $300. Right? But then you've got all the other stuff that goes into it, and there's so many people that don't recognize that. So really, that is really fantastic advice of, you're businessmen in construction, not construction men in business. Mm-hmm. So awesome.
That was the other reason I went into the commercial side of the business versus residential too, because in residential, every week there's a new carpenter starting up a carpentry business. So I don't care how professional you are, you're competing against that all the time. Even if everyone, starts a business next month and goes out of business by the end of the year, there's just another one taking his place. So you have to build a really good clientele that knows you and trusts your business. Or like I did, you get into the commercial side, which I've always termed as, they're professional construction professionals. There's architects and engineers and the people you deal with that really understand construction and the real cost of it. So that was the key in going back to school to learn that business side. You're exactly right. You always underestimated everything because you didn't really realize your true cost, all your taxes and insurances, and you have to calculate all that down to know exactly what your real hourly rate is. And it's a lot more than you think it is.
Absolutely. So this going all the way back, right? You're 16 years old, 15 years old with your first job, not mm-hmm. knowing that you're going to get into this industry. What is this, being in this industry, being in the general contracting and the demolition side, throughout all of your experiences, what has this been able to do for you that you never thought that you would have been able to get to, whether it was traveling or the people you meet, or what's it been able to give you that you never thought was going to be possible?
Well, when I talked earlier about, you kind of look in retrospect at things and kind of realize some things you didn't know at the time. But so I'm 62 years old. At 58, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Well, they tell you don't get ADHD as an adult, you get it as a child. So they looked back and said I developed it probably when I was about 10 years old. Well, that's the reason I probably couldn't focus in school and in college. I just couldn't stay focused on anything. They say that it's real common for entrepreneurs to have ADHD. And I think that's what it does, is it's a business that allows you to have all these different things going on, because that's how our mind works, right? It's just jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think that's what it really helped me with. Again, looking back, literally helped with my ADHD and helped me to manage a successful life. It's an odd thing to say. I'm sure you didn't expect that answer, but that's how I see it for me.
No, it's crazy because my father is very severely dyslexic. And it's similar in the way that your brain functions and the way you think about things, and the way he sees things and the way I see things are completely different. But with all the learning disabilities that come along with dyslexia, he has been able to be very successful. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something like 25% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are dyslexic.
Yeah.
It's like the way that the brain functions gives you the ability to think all these different ways about solving problems or keeping things compartmentalized. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And one of the things that's different about being in the office and versus in the field that you still get to a certain degree is the satisfaction of seeing something completed. Because we're businessmen and we still have to deal with the money and the, change orders and problems on the job, you still at the end, you see something you built, right? So that's pretty cool. And that was what was really nice actually being in the field as a carpenter is you did something at the end of the day, you could see what you did, and then you got to go home and not worry about it till the next day. So there's a real satisfaction in being a field worker, but there's pros and cons to everything.
Sure. I mean, I always thought being in the contracting field in general, it's really nice to go past the job site 5 years later and you're just driving and you can say, you get this little feeling in the pit of your stomach, like you were a part of something that's there.
I'm sure your dad did that just like my dad. Oh, I worked on that building back in 1965 or,
100%.
Went by. Yeah.
The only difference is now we don't talk about it. We just keep it inside because nobody really. It's awesome. So if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently, or would you do nothing differently?
So the only issue I had, and again, I've mentioned this to you before, that a lot of success in a small, especially a smaller business like I had, is luck and timing. It's 30% luck, 30% timing, and 30%, okay, I'm going to make it happen yourself. I think there's a lot of guys that think if they make it happen, then it's 100% them. I think if you think that, then that's probably a fatal flaw, in my mind. But
yeah,
I think the only thing that really hurt me was the recession. Going through that recession in the mid 2000s, in retrospect, I would be much more conservative than I was. Right before that happened, we had a really good year, and I took out a huge loan and bought a whole bunch of brand new equipment. And then, boom, we just got pounded, and I lost tens of thousands of dollars 4 years in a row. I went negative, and it just about bankrupted me and scared the hell out of me. So I was able to make it through that, build value back in, and then that's why in 2017, at that age, I thought, you know what? It's not that I really wanted to sell the business, or that I needed to, or that I wanted to retire. It was none of those. But again, you're a businessman, so you have to start thinking about these things. I think, all right, I'm in my late 50s. I want to retire at about 65-ish. What if this happens again? So that's why I thought, maybe now that we've got some value for me personally, maybe it's a good time to see if there's a buyer out there. So that's why I sold the business. And at the same time, I sold my office building and we downsized our house. Now, downsizing your house is a relative term because it cost me about the same money to build one half the size as the one I sold.
Location, right?
Yeah, right. But it's, I think that's reset is just kind of the biggest thing, and being conservative and really careful and you just really have to anticipate that the worst can happen.
Yeah, it's, it's crazy. Even the times that we're going through right now with what's going on. And, before we started this, we were chatting a little bit kind of offline about you never thought that this kind of the whole world would shut down, but you can never predict when these things are going to happen, but you almost want to try and have a plan in place of what's going to happen when that happens. And I think the really ultra successful contractors that are out there have a plan in place and have a strategy when things change and how they change and can adjust quickly and keep their teams going in the right direction.
Well, I think that's why technology is important too. That I did learn was a really important key. And fortunately, I did that early on. Way back in like the first year of my business, I spent $10,000 to buy a construction accounting software program, and everybody thought I was nuts. $10,000, you barely are getting started.
Yeah.
Saw the value early on in being able to track things and really know what my costs are and be able to do it quickly and efficiently, the payroll and all the payroll reports it generated automatically. So I just saw value in that. And through my entire career, I think keeping up on that technology, both in terms of software and equipment, is that buffer kind of. So if something were to happen, you're able to do more work with less people. That was the thing. When the recession hit, I had 7 estimators in my office. And by the end of the recession, it was me, another full-time estimator, and a part-time bookkeeper. That's what we had to pare it down to. And with all that, I still have that big equipment loan, right, that I just gotten before the recession hit, because you can't sell equipment when everything goes bad. Well, I can sell it. Well, no, you can't. You're stuck. You better find a way to pay the loan. So we always tried to do more with less. And that's still the philosophy to this day I use, even working for Kraus Anderson. And again, why I bought, the robot and, electric wheelbarrows and electric mini skid steers. We want to do more with less. That's
absolutely
the goal.
Your story is fantastic. And I actually couldn't be happier that we were able to put this together, that you were able to come on the show here and we were able to, share some of your experiences with other people. What I want to end it with this question. What advice would you give to yourself now, knowing all the stuff that you've been through and all your experiences? What advice would you give to yourself, if you were 20, 26 years old?
I would just be consistently conservative. I think my first 2 years in business, I was pretty conservative. I didn't really, I was making money, but I was afraid to spend it. Then after a couple of years, I thought, no, we're actually doing pretty damn good here. Maybe we can, do a little something. And I would be more consistently conservative.
Okay.
I guess that would be my main piece of advice to my former self.
Yeah, it's my father used to tell me, he would say, stay small, keep it all.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he would say, right?
Nope.
And I believe it's amazing that some people build these $100 million organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just as amazing if you build $1 million organization.
Right.
It still takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of planning. It takes great leadership to be able to lead people successfully. And whether you're really aggressive in how you approach your business or you're really conservative, as long as you can do it successfully and consistently and treat your people the right way and make sure everybody goes home every day to hug their wife and kids and they wake up in the morning, I think that's the most important thing.
Right. And be calm. You know what? I've never yelled at people in all my 24 years in business. I can't say 100% never, but 99.9%, I never yelled at anybody. And when I caught one of my foremen yelling at people, I would stop them and I would say just that. I've never yelled at you. Don't yell at the guys. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot about respect.
That was another piece of advice my dad gave me too. He said, remember when you're the big wig office guy, when you go out to a job site, you always talk to the guys out there. Always say hi. Always don't just walk by these guys with your head in the air, So another good piece of advice. They're just other guys making a living, trying to support their families.
Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to be on our show, The Contractor's Bible, and hopefully some people out there are able to watch this, listen to it, and get some good little bits of nuggets to make your businesses and lives a little bit more successful. Thank you.
Perfect.